McDowell. Such a pleasure to be with you today, man. And I really, really appreciate you taking this moment to sit down and talk with me because just want to hear from you, man. 50 years, 54 years on the fold. I'm not going to be exhaustive in what I'm saying. I want you to introduce yourself and, tell everybody a little bit about you and who you are.
I'm Ed McDowell. I'm a retired United Methodist Pastor. I've been in the fraternity for 54 years, and I am delighted that 54 years ago, I was a part of the what took place at Claflin College, Lambda Sigma, 54 years ago. I'm delighted that we are able to move in a way that nurtures the Four Cardinal Principles, and to nurture those things because I was nurtured by those cardinal principles.
Just a few things, man, I want to get into because I really want people to really know about your experience and how your journey with Omega actually started. And so when you look at it, man, so being on the yard, Lambda Sigma, Claflin College, late 60s, rolling into the 70s. When was the first time you noticed Omega Psi Phi?
My first observation was through the chaplain, who was a chaplain of Claflin College during the late 60s. Of course, Reverend Charles Johnson, who's a brother, introduced me to the fraternity. Now, I think that was symbolic in itself, and I want to say that gently, but it was symbolic that I was asked to attend a smokers. I was asked to attend a smokers of which the registrar and the DR was on campus at the time. It became obviously clear that I wanted to be an Omega man.
So when you were in school, were you thinking about theology? Is that kind of why you gravitated towards?
It was not. I was not in the theological circles then.
Okay.
I was in the circles of aligning myself with a fraternity that exuded the kind of principles that was necessary for Claflin College.
Okay.
Dr. Rorty was the registrar at the time. He was the resident DR. We were able on Claflin's campus, we were able to solicit his support. He was able to say to us how useful and how thankful we would be in becoming an Omega man. It was more than the hopping and the stomping.
I was going there.
It's more than that.
Okay.
It was a real clear delineation of what the Four Cardinal Principles were all about.
Okay.
To read the history and to read it with such fervency, we were able to move beyond the books into the actual Four Cardinal Principles: Manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. That was the reason. That was the season. And at that particular time, Lambda Sigma was stronger than any other. And district, the 6th district is the smallest, I think. And it was strong in nature. We did not hop that much. We did not well, let me take that back. There are a lot of things that we did, and we did them in the fullest sense of the word, scholarship.
When were you initiated into the fraternity, and kind of what was that whole moment kind of like for you at that time?
My brother and I pledged the fraternity at the same time, much younger than I, but we attended a smokers. Pop Worthy, who was the registrar at the school, the fraternity sponsored the smoker, and my brother and I carried a fraternity we went over the spring of 1970, and we did a whole year probation. Now, I should say that was a real fuzzy feeling, but it was not. It was a harrowing experience. The brothers on the campus at the time were able to exude and to push those cardinal principles towards us.
So, okay, so basically what you're saying is that when you first got initiated into the fraternity, comparatively speaking, what you see now, are you saying that the cardinal principles were something that, the manifestation of that was something that was more prominent at that time, as opposed to it is now?
The cardinal principles and the history was important to us 54 years ago. That was the thing that drove the fraternity, I think. That was the thing that lifted up persons where they were and not where we wanted them to be. But back during the day, we had our share of parties, but we were also socially conscious of what was taking place. Remember now, this was during the time of the massacre, and I call it massacre, in Orangeburg at the time. And of course, it was those kinds of situations that led us to Stokely being on campus, that led us to Miriam Makeba being on campus. The fraternity was socially aware and is able to do things that was necessary, and it become an empowering experience. It's a little different now. Because if the brothers would only rally themselves, we got to understand that when we rally ourselves, we are able to do things and accomplish things that could not be accomplished. Back then the day, it was a riot, man. It was a riot. Folk died. And we were able to witness some of that. Some of my brothers who was at the march in Orangeburg, and the things that happened in Orangeburg, they were there. And you ran from State's campus to Orangeburg campus with holes in their buttocks, holes in their jaws, billet holes in the bottom of their feet. What was an awareness? And Stokely gave us, each of us, an opportunity to not only hear what he had to say, but to become proactive.
Well, who were some of the influential brothers at the time when you actually crossed the sands?
Well, Jesse, of course, became one of those brothers who was very empowered with the word. He was empowered with the word in such a way that he was able to get things done. O.J. Nelson, Reverend Nelson, who was a brother in Orangeburg, was our advisor, a very strengthening, powerful man, a man who was able to move when he was a Presbyterian pastor. He was able to move us when we didn't want to be moved. When we were young men, we were conscious of what was happening, but we were not of the opinion, we were not of the belief that when Reverend Nelson spoke, he spoke consciously about a social movement in Orangeburg County. That was the thing. I have a Pop Worthy, who again was a registrar of Claflin College. He was influential in getting us right.
If you could touch on this just a little bit for me, the political climate at that time. Can you touch on that for just a little bit?
The political climate 54 years ago as it relates to Orangeburg, Claflin College in South Carolina State, was the massacre that took place in Orangeburg. Folk did not sense nor feel the impact of that, what took place that awful night when the soldiers, came up walk up that hill. It was the impact that moved us in such a way that we became socially aware because, as you know, both campuses had to be deserted. They had to leave. So there was no social impact on either one of those campuses when that happened in Columbia. What happened in Columbia resonated until we graduated. Then it became a blistering, festering kind of discussion between folk who understood that the Orangeburg Massacre was a massacre. It was not just a random shooting of guys, but it was a massacre because 3 folk died.
Right. And so the Orangeburg Massacre, if I'm correct, that was national news, right?
That was national news. It was national news. Of course, the governor, in his own way, decided that he wanted National Guard to come there. And all it took is one night and one battalion to march from the street, from that large intersection, from the street to that vacant field. And that's where they shot buckshots. And that's where they murdered. The clown in Orangeburg was terrible. It was almost like we crossed the tracks, you went into a different zone. The bowling alley was a different zone. That was a bowling alley with white folk, a bowling alley that only secured its presence in the community with a white presence and did not include black folk. It was terrible. Orangeburg was terrible. And there are pockets probably still in Orangeburg where that same kind of mentality still exists.
How were the bros able to kind of come in? What kind of blanketing, if you will, did the fraternity offer, or, you know, in terms of shielding persons from racism, fighting against racism, fighting against discrimination? What were some of the things that you guys...
Yeah, one of the things that we did, and we started an organization, I never forget it, it was called BDOD,
Okay.
Black Brothers for Defense.
Okay.
And the president approached us, he said, "What are you defending?" We're defending our integrity, we're defending the ability to move and to act on things responsibly. And that was not being done. The brothers were able to come together. Back 54 years ago, we had rap sessions where folk would come together, the brothers would come together, and we talk not about things, but we talked about things that were reasonable and that was highlighted in a way that folk could sense that something was going to happen positively.
A good part of that impact came from you being a man of Omega.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Not only was I a member of BDOD, Black Brothers for Defense, but I was an Omega man. And that in itself played volumes as it relates to being socially conscious.
Gotcha. Has the change, based on what you endured, what your line brothers endured, what all black folk endured during that time, what are you seeing as a change now? Positive, negative? Just give it to me.
Well, some of it is positive and some of it is negative, okay? And that change has to do locally with housing.
Okay.
It has to do with medical care that will not indigent care. Indigent care Of course, we want that to take place, but we also want folk to be capitalized in such a way that they are being cared for, whether they are indigent or they can afford it. It is my belief that if something is happening in the past, we elongate it to the present. It becomes present narrative. Not only a narrative, but you're elongated in such a way that lives are changed.
That makes sense.
Lives are changed, man. I mean, if we can't, uh, a good example, Jim Claflin has done great things in South Carolina, and particularly in Columbia. He's done great things, man. And there are other things that he can do and we can do together, collaboratively. Gotcha. Together. And housing is a need.
Was that a problem then?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Was it the lack of housing or lack of housing and discrimination?
Both, all three.
And so you're saying now that's been elongated into this present moment. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We stand now in this elongated presence with persons not having adequate houses. I can ride through a neighborhood and see that there are places where folk, I mean, why live there? When it's like this, let's do something about it. Whether it's through HUD, whether it's through the city producing those kinds of dollars that would elongate itself into community block grants, it's up to us. So we just can't continue to politicize ourselves in places and in boroughs and in pockets where there is extreme poverty.
I got you. I got you. So in looking at all of that, and we're gonna talk about some other things too, but in looking at all of that, um, do you think we're on an upwards trend of change, a positive change, or you think we're kind of stagnated at this point or where we are in society?
I think primarily we at the middle of the road. Okay, we got to find out who we are and what realistically and collaboratively has to take place in persons' lives, whether it's a homeless situation or whether it's a medical issue, whether it's food, deserts, not being present in communities. I think we're midways. Okay. We hadn't reached that point yet. So, and it's going to take some time before that happens. And if that were to happen, it has to happen in such a way that food deserts are dissolved, appropriate housing is out there for folk, medical treatment. So, do you know that Columbia, the 29203 zip code, is the capital city for leg amputations?
I did not know that.
Check it out. 29203 is a capital city. This is in the capital city. 29203 is the number one place in the nation for leg amputation.
And so that's primarily
Well, that's Black demographic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Google it. If you don't believe me, Google it. And if you don't believe high blood pressure, heart disease, and amputations in 29203 are at its highest level, Google it.
Gotcha.
Where's 29203? Across the rook, right over here.
Yes.
That's the amputation capital of the world, man. Yes. And that's why my emphasis is on the whole notion of getting folk there.
Yes, sir. Now let me ask you this. You got a quite impressive resume, and you've been active in the community just about as long as you could have been. after getting out of college and that sort of thing. How have you been able to kind of impart some of this good information on the bros as you kind of went, kind of spent your time in the frat?
Well, early on, it was like that when I was in Charleston and I interacted with Mu Alpha.
Okay.
In Charleston.
Okay.
There's not been a lot of that being done. I think we got to concentrate more on partnering with other folk, partnering with our brothers, partnering with other folk, other fraternities and sororities,
Sure.
and providing that same kind of information in Columbia that we've done in Charleston and those places. So there has to be a collaborative effort. It can't be a single individualized effort. It has to be collaborative.
So you think that so you're saying that within the fraternity we need to have our own think tanks. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. And it doesn't matter who do them. It doesn't necessarily
Just be involved.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily look. I think a think tank involves not only persons who are in the fraternal order, but persons outside of the order who are able to give to the brothers the kind of information that is needed for things to happen, man. That's when it happens. It can very well happen with another brother and imparting that kind of knowledge to other brothers. But like I said, and I hate to be redundant when I say this, it's more than hopping, man. It's more than drinking that bottle of Hennessy. This is about understanding that it's about understanding who we are as men.
Absolutely.
Kawanji Kunjufu said some years ago, Kawanji said that young boys turn into men.
Yes, sir.
And men turn into those things where young boys men have developed younger men to be men. And until we get to that point, man, that's it. That's when we're going to realize that the bros is more than, and I hate to say it, man, it's more than looking good, smelling good, and doing well, man. It's more than hopping. It's more than the sweetheart song.
Yes, sir.
It's about doing something that is tangible.
We're talking about Jackie Dinkins, who a lot of people don't know.
Who Jackie Dinkins was, man, in Bowie, out of Bowie, man.
What he down there with? What he with Ray Singh?
He was with Ray Singleton. He wore the same number that Michael Jordan wore, man. And he played overseas, man. And we made him, man. Lambda Sigma. He died of an aneurysm, man. Jackie Lincoln.
Yeah.
Bohees.
Yeah. It was. So, just a couple other things, brother. I want to know. I want your opinion on something. This is something that this is something that a lot of folk want to ponder. What do you believe is the future of Omega?
The future of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated has to align itself with men who are able and willing to capture the dream. And the dream has to be one that we are able as brethren to capture the Four Cardinal Principles and capture them in such a way that folk are able to not only to pronounce those things, but to put those things into doable action items. The future for the Omega Psi Phi fraternity is not geared towards hopping and screaming and stomping. It's about understanding your history. Understanding what it's all about. And it's not about the purple Kool-Aid.
The oil.
It's not about that, man. It's not about twisting and turning. My grandson has a way that he is a part of the legacy of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And the thing that I say to him, and I say to him occasionally, I say, look, man, it's more than hopping and twisting and turning. It's about capturing the vision of what Just and the other founders knew, that it was more than that, and that we are able to launch forward. That launching pad has to be of such that we are able to do. And that's why I give time, and not only time, but also finances, to the brothers and to this event that's taking place in April. That's why I do that. Not because I got a good piece of wood, but because I got my dollars back up the wood.
There you go.
And we are able to do what we're doing the latter part of April in such a way that minds and hearts are going to be changed. And that's the future.
What's your message to the brotherhood? If you could say anything, what would you say to the brothers?
Brothers, my brothers who sticks closer than a brother. And I've heard that, you've heard that saying before. But there needs to be a collaborative movement within the fraternity and among the brothers that is going to signal change within the community and within this city of ours. There has to be change that takes place, and it has to effectuate itself within the brotherhood. The brotherhood has got to, we can't be jealous about each other. We can't. We can't be jealous about each other. All of us are weaved under this with the same cloth, man. We can't be jealous about each other. We can't be envious of each other. We are brothers, man. Wrapped in the fabric of friendship is essential to the soul. And if that doesn't happen, then we as well sit down and just have a club of some sort, man. But it has to be collaborative in nature.
Bless you, my brother.
Manhood, scholarship, perseverance, uplift.